Hi Mappers! Today we will learn about one of our Red Cross programs called CP3. CP3 stands for Community Epidemic and Pandemic Prevention Program, led by IFRC in 8 different countries, including Guinea. Today we will hear from David Luswata and Tino Toupane, who are involved with community mapping in Guinea for CP3. They both have also worked in the West Africa Mapping Project that took place in 2016, mapping border communities in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. David and Tino both will be sharing lessons learned from that project, as well as for creating data for CP3 currently. These conversations were filmed in Conakry, and here they are.
Hi, my name is David Luswata. I am an GIS consultant, information management and GIS consultant with the American Red Cross. I am currently supporting Guinea with the CP3 program.
Can you tell us about the West Africa Mapping Project that you were involved in and what your role was in that?
Great. So the West Africa Mapping Project happened in 2016. It was a project that happened in the border regions of Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. I was the GIS supervisor for the project, so I was leading the project based in the field in Gekedu in Guinea. This project was a response project in these 3 countries following the outbreak of Ebola in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone 2014 to 2016. And the project was here to support the response activities that were still going on. This was birthed out of the response activities that happened during the outbreak, where the responding teams lacked enough information about the location of key infrastructure. They lacked information about the location of communities in the entire region. So OpenStreetMap was used as a platform that many mappers came to and started mapping these communities, and then information was availed to the responding teams.
How do you think the data that was collected from that project, what has the National Society learned from that experience and the data collected? Because as we can see this week, they've referenced back to that project a lot, and so it means that there was value that they took away from that. What do you think was the impact for the National Society on the collected data?
Right. So that project indeed was, we can say, it was an eye-opener in the field of open mapping and open data in this region. The National Society speaks so highly of the project and the activities that we undertook. A lot of information was collected in these regions, the border regions of the 3 countries. But here specifically in Guinea, we collected information on communities and other features as well. But from what we've seen discussing with the National Society this week, they have increased understanding of what mapping can do in responding to disasters. And I think this is a very big takeaway in terms of how the National Society does its response to disasters within the country here. And the data that was created is continuously being used, not only by the National Society here responding to disasters, but the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Transport, the universities are really encouraging their students to do research in OpenStreetMap and using OpenStreetMap data. So I think this is a very big takeaway that we can learn from projects of this nature, that when they come, they are not only just responding to the need that may be there at the time, but they leave a lifelong impact within the regions where they are carried out.
So that project ended, and that was about 3 years ago. And now your support is on a new IFRC-led project, CP3. In the last few days, we've been discussing and planning community mapping activities. What lessons, big or small, from the West Africa Mapping Project do you think you can leverage now with new community mapping activities for CP3?
During the West Africa Mapping Project, we used quite a number of tools to do community mapping. And these, in my own work, have been very, very instrumental in doing the kind of mapping that we did in the West Africa Mapping Project, which is essentially the same mapping work we are going to do in this project. The skills that we learned then, especially for me, I already knew about OpenStreetMap, I knew about these tools, but I had the chance to put into practice what I'd known, what I'd learned at a smaller scale. But the project then was an opportunity to practice what I had been doing at a smaller scale. For the rest of the team that I was working with, it was the beginning of interacting with OpenStreetMap and the tools, the open mapping tools, but it has been from that point an onward journey where they've continued and I've continued myself to use the open mapping tools, ODK, OSM and OpenMapKit. These are very wonderful tools that we have continued to use, and we'll be using these very tools in this project, the community mapping activities that we're going to be conducting.
What do you think is the added value of remote mapping?
Interesting. Remote mapping, you see, you appreciate the impact of remote mapping when you are out in the field. During the West Africa Mapping Project, we moved in the different regions of these 3 countries, Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone, but you would get into a place, if you do not have a map, you have nowhere to go, you get lost. So remote mapping is so important, and I really so grateful to the volunteers that take time to trace buildings, roads, waterways from satellite imagery. They are helping a lot for teams that are in the field responding to disasters, because that building that is added remotely on the map is actually going to provide a lot of guidance for navigation in the field. Or it may be a footpath or a road, a residential road, or any other road that is added on the map, traced from satellite imagery through remote mapping. That provides a lot of guidance when we are moving in the field, conducting field mapping, reaching out to communities and speaking to people in the field.
Last question. Do you have any comments or advice to share with our mappers, especially new mappers?
Having worked in these countries, I've worked in from the West Africa Mapping Project 2016. I've gone on to work in Liberia, once again, Botswana, Ghana, Tanzania, and Uganda, and working with different teams within these countries. One thing that stands out is that the contribution that our mappers make, Missing Maps mappers, is so enormous and so helpful, not only to the Red Cross but to government agencies that are working to eliminate, say, malaria in the different parts of Africa. So my message to remote mappers is you're doing a great job. It may seem small, just sitting around and tracing buildings, but actually some health worker is using that information that you're adding deep down in Botswana, deep down in Zimbabwe, in Uganda, down in Liberia. It is being used. So I want to encourage you to keep up the good work that you're doing, keep up mapping, keep tracing those buildings, add those roads on the map, and let's add more lives and more people on the map. So I want to say thank you so much for mapping.
Ooh.
Tino, can you introduce yourself? What is your name and role with the Red Cross movement?
Okay. Hello, my name is Tino Toupane. I'm a geographer, actually working as a GIS consultant for IFRC to support the CP3 project. I worked also in the past, in 2016, as a GIS analyst for a West Africa mapping project in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone.
Can you tell us a little more about that project? As a GIS analyst, what did you do?
So the West Africa mapping project, his main objective was to map unmapped communities within the border region between Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. And I was recruited as a GIS analyst to support mapping this region, and I was the GIS analyst supporting Sierra Leone country.
So it's been 3 years since the project. How do you think the data that was collected for the project, how do you think it's used in the community now?
So the data collected during the West Africa mapping project is being used in the country by several actors. Some of these actors are working in private sector, so I'm in the consultancy offices. So the people from the academic world, I mean the universities, are also using the data collected. Personally, I'm teaching GIS at the Veterinary University of Dalaba here in Guinea, and this year also I will be teaching GIS at the University of Bokeh. And in the past, when I was dealing with the student at the University of Dalaba, I used to show them how to go to OpenStreetMap, collect the data, and produce map. So the major use of this information also in the country is by the Ministry of Transport, because actually the Ministry of Transport is working on a project named PEST, is meaning the Projet d'appui au transport in French. And they are working to put in place a road network database for all the country. And in this database, they are using, for this data, to build this database, they are using OSM data, because I know that they are downloading the road network from OSM to build the database.
So at the moment, you're supporting a new project led by the IFRC called CP3, and you're working in the work stream 3, which is data readiness. I know in the last few days we've been planning our mapping activities. What lessons, big or small, from the West Africa mapping project do you think has helped you prepare for the CP3 mapping in the upcoming weeks?
So what I learned from the West Africa mapping project in the domain of mapping, it's very challenging for our countries to produce geographical data, because when we are producing data on OpenStreetMap, we need to have a good an internet facility that enable to have a good internet connectivity in order to be doing some edits on OpenStreetMap. But during the West Africa mapping project, we used a tool named JOSM, and this tool is wonderful because when you are using JOSM, you are capable, once the imagery is loaded on the software, you can map, edit offline, and this helps a lot to map if the internet facility is not good. And these experiences, we are using it here in Guinea with the local OSM communities, and I'm sure as part of the CP3 activities, we will be using the same software. And during the West Africa mapping project also, I learned how to manage more than 10 person during field mapping. And I think this will be very helpful for me as a GIS analyst for CP3 during the field mapping we're going to conduct in Farana.
I have two last questions for you. In your experience, now that you've been doing this for a long time, what is the added value of good quality OSM data produced by remote mapping? How has that enhanced programs or projects?
So, during West Africa mapping, we used to have some trainings on data quality and also on data cleaning. And these experiences I learned from that former project were very, very nice and very good, because for the OSM community here in Guinea, I'm supporting conduct the trainings. I am also the one who work to validate what the volunteers are mapping. And the work I'm doing actually, these experiences, I learned it from the West Africa Mapping Project.
The data that goes into OSM, what's the value?
So the value of the data going to OSM is to help the decision makers have access to information if they want to visualize a region before implementing a project. And the data going to OSM is also very useful for humanitarian purpose, because what I learned from the Guinea Red Cross, actually they are implementing several projects in the country, but when they implement the project, it's very difficult for them, as they don't know how to use GIS, they don't know how to do data visualization. And the data we are uploading on OSM are very useful, because they help a lot to make better decisions.
And final question, do you have any advice or comments for our mappers doing and supporting remote mapping?
So the advices I'm giving here, we need a lot of support, because we do not have internet facilities. So people do not know how to use ICT equipment. So if we want to have a better quality data, our mappers need to be well trained. They need to be well trained on how to edit and how to attribute the keys and the values of each features they are mapping.